Yes, Anish sir, you can start with the welcome note, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir. I welcome Rashmi Nastanna, sir. He is right now working at AV Parekh Technical Institute, Rajkot. He has a more than 10 years experience in academic. He has a subject of interest is IoT, variable sensor system, wireless communication, and embedded system. He completed his bachelor from VEP Engineering College, Rajkot in 2005. He completed his master from Atmiya Institute of Technology and Science, Rajkot in 2016. Currently, he is pursuing his PhD under the guidance of Dr. C.H. Vitlani sir at GTU. His topic of PhD is variable sensor system to track and classify mom- movement pattern of lower limb during rehabilitation exercise for medical purpose. I welcome you sir for this session. Now I am handing over the session to Tanna sir.
Thank you, sir. Let me start the video once again. So is the video visible and my voice audible?
Yes sir. Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. I would like to thank the team of Atal FDP and Gorodia sir for giving me this opportunity to give an expert talk in front of all the faculties. Some of them are my seniors also, and I'm told to give a very fundamental and basic lecture and make it as much interactive as possible. I know the timing of the lecture is 2 to 4, and it is the toughest time of the day to actually focus, right? But I will try my best and make it as interactive as possible. In between the talk, if anyone find any query or want to ask something, can stop me and ask me, and we can discuss on the topic. There is no issue. Fine. Okay, so shall we start?
Yes, sir.
Yes sir. Yes, we can start.
Okay. Uh, Basically, my today's talk is limited to a specific area of wearable devices which track the movement patterns of lower limb, right? And specifically for rehabilitation exercises. But directly going to that topic won't be a great idea, because everyone should be familiar with all the concepts, right? About wearable devices, how they track and how we can train them, right? So I have divided the topic, the lecture in 4 different parts. The first one is what are wearable devices, that you may already be knowing it because you are attending this training from a couple of days, right? And many sessions have gone through. What kind of sensor that we are using for tracking the movement patterns, the IMU sensors, we are going to study that, and how we can train these sensors using machine learning, and what amount of work is done till now, and what amount of work could be done on this rehabilitation tracking, exercise tracking of lower limb, right? We'll talk about that. So the most basic question that everybody asks is that, sir, I want to work with wearable devices. I want to work with this IMU sensors and machine learning, but where do I start? Where do I start, right? How to start? From where do I search? Where do I get all the data sets, or from where can I get the software? In which language can we program? And what kind of sensors are best for tracking the movements? These are the basic questions, right? So before starting that, I just want to know that wearable sensors that you have studied, right, are actually divided into different areas of applications, right? Some wearable sensors are tracking your movements, some are tracking your activities, some are tracking your pulse rates, oxygen levels, right? Some are providing you informations, right? Google Glasses, right? Fitbit watches, you know everything about that. Do you know from where this wearable sensors concept have started? It is a very interesting thing, right? Because our ancestors already know about wearable sensors. They already knew about it. And most of us have known these stories, right? From our mythology. Can anyone give me one or two examples of wearable sensors that you might have come across in the stories that we have heard in our childhood, right? Any examples of ancient people using wearable sensors or wearable devices? Can you guess? Let's make this session more interactive, right? Let's discuss these things, not just an expert talk.
Dear participants, as per the sir request, we unmuted all the mics. So you can unmute yourself and ask the question or make an interactive session more. Thank you.
Sir, good afternoon, sir.
Afternoon.
Sir, in an introductory section, Sare has told that Walkman is also wearable device, sir. Earlier
Yes.
days, we have used that Walkman, but we don't know that it was a wearable device. But I came to know that in introductory class, Sare has told, then I was surprised. That time onwards, we have used this wearable devices. Walkman is one of the examples, sir.
Yeah. But I want to go more into our ancient history, right? During Mahabharata and Ramayana stories. Can you guess, give an example of wearable sensors? There were many, lots of devices. They used to talk about that. Let me give you one example. Have you heard the story of Karna in Mahabharata?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, definitely. Most of us have heard the story of Karna. He was born from Sun. He was right. He was the son of Sun, and
He has the protective
yes,
cloth like from something,
yeah,
which will save him from war.
yes,
Yes.
exactly. Karna, you had an armor with him and earrings, right? A kavach and kundal. Uh, both were provided to him for his protection during his birth itself, and it stayed with him during the war also, right? And the story goes on. But the armor which he had, do you think it was just a normal armor, or the earrings were just the normal earrings? According to me, they were one type of wearable devices. The armor used to protect him, and the earrings which he had used to inform him about the attacks that were going to happen on him. They used to indicate him, they used to sense the danger which is around him. One more example I can give you, that is of Sanjay. Do you know in Mahabharata there was one character known as Sanjay who used to describe the whole war going on at the faraway places to Dhritarashtra, right? Uh, we can compare his Divya Drashti with Google Glasses, right? Right now that we are using. I can go on and on and on about these examples. Actually, our ancestors used to have these wearable sensors, right? And its applications differ from providing security, tracking movements, sensing the danger, or sensing something which we cannot sense with our natural senses, right? So we can call them as wearable sensors or wearable devices. Okay, so now let us start. What do I mean by wearable devices for rehabilitation? The word rehabilitation, you all may be knowing what is the meaning of rehabilitation. Rehabilitation means someone has gone through some injury or has some medical conditions which need to be treated on a daily exercise basis, right? They have to visit a physiotherapy center. They have to perform the exercises on a regular basis. They have to remain under observation, and after 4, 5 or 6 to 12 weeks they take to completely recover from that condition, right? So can we have wearable devices which can help in this area, or is there any scope for wearable devices in this area? Let us discuss about that first, right? So there are some conditions which require lower limb rehabilitation program according to Association of Physiotherapists. The first one is uh, orthopedic conditions. You all know or might have gone some most of us have, might have gone through some one or the other orthopedic conditions in which we require a little bit of rehabilitation process, right? Once we are having some joint pain or muscle pain or some ligament injury while going to gym or exercising in an incorrect way, or while playing some sports, we can have some injury, we can have some fracture due to some accident, right? Or muscular weaknesses. So they all require some kind of rehabilitation, right? Children also might need some rehabilitation in conditions like cerebral palsy, muscular diseases, right? Or congenital deformities. Some neurological conditions like paralysis, stroke, balance problem, Parkinson disease, walking difficulties, they also require rehabilitation, and this process goes on for a very long period of time, right? So they have to consult a physiotherapist for many years, right? On a go. And some gynecological problems also occur to ladies after or during the pregnancy period. They also require some rehabilitation, and some diseases like diabetes, hypertension, or you need to lose some weight or gain some weight. In both the cases, you require some training for exercises, or you need some standard format to follow and someone to track you. Means you are doing proper exercise or not, means you are properly doing weightlifting properly or not, is your back straight or not, is your hand is moving properly or not, are you balanced on your feet or not? These things someone has to monitor, right? So how do we monitor right now? What are the options or alternatives around us which we are using right now, right? There are only three options which we are using right now. The first option is 3D motion capture, right? The first option is 3D motion capture. Second is depth camera based system, right? RGB based systems. And the third one, which we might have also used, is visual analysis by a trained professional, or a physiotherapist, doctor, right? Motion capture systems are very expensive, right? Motion capture systems, we cannot, normal guys could not afford it. They are in lakhs. Their setup require an different lab. In that lab, you have to set up these cameras and markers on your body, and then you have to process the data, and then you get the result that how was the motion, properly you have moved or not, right? These systems are rarely used outside of the laboratory. Second option with us is depth-based camera systems, which we are using right now in gaming, for gaming purposes, right? Xbox and Kinect and all these gaming devices are coming with this depth cameras, and they track us through some points, marking some points on our body through the image processing. And when these joints or these points move, markers move, they track our movement, and the respective action is taken on their side, right? But these systems are also around 30-50,000, and this system are not suitable for tracking injuries, means injured part of your lower limb, and to track its movement because accurately, because in this depth based camera system, if someone is moving behind you, or your image is not clear, lightning is not clear in your room, then that might cause the system to alter its decisions, right? So it is not suitable right now. And the last option, which is for us, is to visit a physiotherapy center or call him at our house, right, for home visit. There are some injuries where we cannot visit the physiotherapy center. Lower limb injuries are mostly like that. Lower limb injuries are very difficult to tackle because your mobility is not fully functioning, right? You cannot climb stairs, you cannot drive vehicles, right? So in that case, a home visit by physiotherapist is preferable. So this is the third option. Now, can wearable sensors be the fourth option?
Sir,
In this, yes.
your slides are not fully visible. It is getting trimmed from top and bottom. Maybe you can readjust your settings.
Sure. Let me see. So it is in my view, it is visible completely.
Yes, sir. It is visible completely. You can go ahead.
Okay. Can wearable sensors be the fourth option for being a very low cost device for tracking this movement patterns, so that the physiotherapist does not require to visit you, or the patient doesn't require to visit the center frequently? So let us try to discuss about that. Can wearable devices replace these costly systems, right? So what are the advantages of a wearable device? You all might be knowing what are the advantages of wearable device. The most important advantage of wearable device is they are portable and they are very cheap, right? They are very low cost. Once they are, once the R&D is done and the software is installed and the hardware is made, the mass production of these devices becomes very cheap, right? They are very energy efficient, they require less maintenance, they support different kinds of wireless connectivities, right? They are easy to set up, means a novice can also wear a smartwatch and can follow its instructions and work with it, right? No need of any professional there. And there are many inertial motion sensors which could be included in these devices, and they can easily track the limb movements, right? They are very robust, means they can be used anywhere. Mostly where the other systems fail, these devices are so compact and so easily we can use them at any situations, right? Difficult situations, like if you are tracking somewhere or in a desert, anywhere, right? Remote locations, right? It could track variety of body parts and postures. Now, for tracking the movement of the body, sky is the limit. You can track many things about your body, right? So wearable sensors, your wrist, the band, one of bands which you're using is tracking your oxygen level, your pulse rate, right? Your activity, means how many steps you have, step counts you have moved, how much distance you have covered, right? Your sleep activities, everything can be tracked. So wearable devices have a lot of advantages, right? But can we use them for rehabilitation purposes, right? So how can we decide that whether they are useful for rehabilitation or not? Then we have to ask patients which are facing difficulties. We have to ask doctors. If both of them are convincing about convinced about these wearable sensors, then we can decide that we can use it for rehabilitation. So we have consulted many patients having this knee joint problem and orthopedic conditions, and these patients are facing many difficulties, Like they face the main difficulty is they cannot do the exercise alone. Means doctor has specified what to do, but if the doctor is not present or the physiotherapist is not present, then if a person tries to do these exercises, he might be doing something wrong and more injury might come to him. If he is giving more stress on a specific portion of the body, then he might injure himself, right? That is one of the problem. And the second problem is the person who is doing the exercise, it is not trained, so he doesn't know how much degree movement is okay and how much degrees of movement is not okay, right? So that is the problem with patients. And as I told, that lower limb injuries causes the patient to lose their mobility. Means they it is not easy for them to access the physiotherapy centers, right? So they call them at their home. What do doctors say? Now let us see doctors' sides. Doctors and physiotherapists had given a survey in which 50 physiotherapists and orthopedics of this Saurashtra Gujarat region we have consulted, and from that we decided that this chart is made, and from that we can decide are the wearable sensors useful for doctors or not, right? 60% of doctors said that patients need to visit the rehab center daily, right? The word is daily. When you are going through a rehabilitation program, you have to visit this center daily. So 60% of cases they require to visit the center daily. Second is more than 66% of doctors visit the patient. Means patients prefer that doctors visit their home. Because they are not they cannot go easily to the physiotherapy center, right? And when we ask to doctors or physiotherapists that are you using any wearable device right now for treating your patients, more than only 12% told us that we are using some kind of device for tracking blood pressure or pulses or oxygen level. But for movement patterns, most of them they used the old age techniques, right? Goniometer or their lab setups. They were not using wearable devices. So there is a lot of scope, right? 86% of them have said no, right? So then we ask them, would you prefer that some of your patient is using a wearable device and he provides that device provides you the patient's data on a daily basis to your mobile or laptop? Would you prefer that? Then 70% of doctors said yes, we would like that. That will save a lot of time, their time and patient's time. Then we ask them that would wearable devices be helpful to monitor patients conditions remotely? Then 70% of them have said yes. It will be very helpful if a device like that is available. So after going through both patients and doctors, what can we say that? Now we can say that wearable technology is going to be a huge impact. It's going to make a huge impact in rehabilitation process, right? It will become compulsory for physiotherapists and patients to have these devices in near future, right? Some of these devices have become as a part of our day-to-day life right now also. Okay, so wearable IMUs are being now used universally for monitoring step counts, oxygen levels, pulse rates, sleep activities of healthy people. Healthy people are already using it. Now just we need some medical professionals or researchers like us to make the devices available for medical applications. We have to just to make device accurate as per medical standards, right? And for that you require a lot of a data set programming, means machine learning and a deep learning process, right? Okay, so this was all about wearable sensors and wearable devices and its application in rehabilitation exercises. Are you having any questions regarding this, or should I move to the next topic, that is what kind of sensors that we are using in this? Any participant would like to say anything about rehabilitation, wearable devices, and in rehabilitation process? Okay, you can.
You can continue, sir.
Yes, yes, no problem. You can send your queries at the end of session also. Right? Okay, good, good. Yeah. Okay, let's move on to IMU sensors. You might have heard about this IMU sensors since many sessions regarding wearable devices is going on. But let us go through it, some of its basics, because when you are going to build, my aim is after this talk, some of you at least begin designing a wearable device, right? So you must be knowing the basics of IMU sensor, right? So all of you are familiar with IMU sensor. Should I skip this portion or?
No, sir, please elaborate this because it is not covered in this FDP.
Okay, okay. So my concern was that if some of the topics are already covered in the previous sessions, then it might become a very boring session, right? So no problem. Let us go through this. What is IMU sensor, right? So IMU sensors are inertial measurement units. You all know what is inertia, right? A body which is feeling inertia or inertial force, right? It is related with a motion. Now, what is the inertial measurement units? Inertial measurement units, they measure the force applied to the body to which it is connected, the amount of force and the direction of force and the orientation of the force, right? So it measures three things. It measures the amount of force, it measures the direction of force, and it measures the orientation of the force. Now, how can it measure all the three things? A small device like this can measure all these things, right? So the term inertial sensor is used to denote combination of 3-axis accelerometer and a 3-axis gyroscope. So you all might be knowing what is an accelerometer and a gyroscope, right? The accelerometer will give the acceleration in a particular direction. It's a 3-axis accelerometer will give us the motion or the acceleration in 3 different directions, X, Y, and Z direction, 3 axis, right? What is a gyroscope? Gyroscope will measure the angular velocity, at what angle the movement is taking place, and the rate of change of that orientation, means how speedily it is changing, right? The both things it will measure. Okay, the accelerometer will measure the specific force acting on the sensor in a specific direction, and gyroscope will measure the angular velocity. Okay. This picture is of one of the Bluetooth altitude angle sensor, that is of wind motion, right? That I have also used it in my research work. Okay, you can also avail it from online, and you can start programming using it, right? It is a 9-axis sensor. Okay. Now, what is an accelerometer and how it works, right? As I told you, the accelerometer measures the amount of force and the direction of force. Now, how it measures the amount of force and direction of force, right? It is working on the principle of piezoelectric effect. This all the IMU sensors are based on MEMS technology. You all know what is the meaning of MEMS, that is micro electromechanical systems, right? MEMS technology. Okay, let me share you the microscopic level picture of it. Okay, I have shared a presentation. Is it visible to you? Hello. Okay, wait a second.
Now it is visible.
Okay, okay. So yeah, this was what I was talking about, motion capture, and these are the videos of GIFs of some of the depth camera measuring the angles, right? Okay. This is the picture of the MEMS technology. This is the microscopic level of the picture or photo of MEMS technology based quartz sensor. All right. You can see the vibrations taking place in it. These are the upper portion area is known as spring, which is a movable portion, and the stationary portion is called proof mass. Right. So how the acceleration works? You can see from this. It's a very easy process, right? See what happens that in MEMS accelerometer, the green area is the fixed plates, right? And the red plates can be moved using the spring which is attached on the end portion of it, right? When this red and green plates are moving away or near to each other, the capacitance between these plates, here C1 and C2 represents the capacitance, right? The capacitance changes between these two plates when the red plate moves towards or away from the green plate, right? And from this we can decide the acceleration. See, one more diagram, one more video is there. In this, you can see that this kind of MEMS structure is developed. The central blue portion or the blue plates is the proof mass, right? It is not moving. It is stationary. Now the green and the yellow portion is also stationary, means it is not moving by itself, but the green part, the green plates are known as springs, and they move in the direction of force. Means when the force is applied in the opposite directions, they move. And when they move, they also change the direction of the red part, right? These red plates. And when these red plates move, the capacitance between the blue and the red plate changes. And by measuring this capacitance, we can decide from which direction the force is being applied. So we can decide X, Y, and Z direction from this. And now how can we decide the angular motion? That we will know in the gyroscope part, right? So this is all about accelerometer. Did you guys get something about what is how it functions?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, great. Okay, is my video now visible again?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so the pictures which I shown you were actual MEMS technology. Now, how can you imagine what is going on inside it, right? You can imagine that there is a cube is there, and on which is having 3 pairs of opposite walls, means total 6 walls are there, right? 4 sides and top and bottom we can count, and then we have a cube having 6 pairs of walls, and there is a solid ball, a sphere, right, which is in between, which is freely floating, right? It's our imagination, so we can imagine anything, right? So it is freely floating in between there. It is not touching any walls, right? Now what happens? Somebody comes and pushes from one side of the wall. What will happen? The ball will touch that part from where the force is applied. In that part of the cube, the ball will touch. As soon as the ball touches there, it will apply some gravity, means it will apply some force, means it will have some contact, and then it will apply the force on the wall. When it will apply some force on the wall, it can be measured by piezoelectric effect. What is piezoelectric effect? You all might be knowing about this type of materials, right? Piezoelectric materials. The piezoelectric materials are that kind of materials that convert the mechanical stress applied on them into electrical energy or voltage. It will generate some voltage. When you apply some stress on it, it will generate some voltage. Or reverse effect can also happen. You apply some voltage to it, like quartz material. You apply some voltage to it, then it will have some mechanical motion, means it will vibrate. Right? So this kind of effect is known as piezoelectric effect. So from this 3D analogy, this is just imagination. This kind of ball is not placed in the sensor, but we can imagine like that. The MEMS technology is based on fixed mass and movable springs, which I shown you in the picture. So clear everyone about accelerometer, how it measures it, right? The direction and the magnitude of the force. Now let's move on to gyroscope and how it works, right? So gyroscope works on Coriolis acceleration principle, right? So there is a fork-like structure. Imagine a fork-like structure. Okay. Now the fork-like structure. Okay. A fork-like structure is there. It is constantly moving. It is constantly moving in one direction like this. Now, when you rotate it somewhere, its reference part, which is at the bottom, is not moving. The top portion is moving. The bottom portion is also movable, but it is not. It is right now stationary. So when you rotate it in one direction, what will happen? It will apply a same kind of rotation in opposite direction to the support. Right? You can better see it from visuals. I will show. Okay, let me show you. Okay. Is the slide visible? Hello, guys.
Yes, visible.
Okay. So it is a fork-like structure, and its base portion is not moving. Now, when you rotate it, try to rotate it, what will happen? And reverse force will be applied on its base, and you amplify that, filter that, and you give it to the multimeter. You will find out that some voltage is generated due to piezoelectric effect. Right. So this is the main principle of gyroscope. Okay. Okay. Okay, so video is on now, right? Is it visible?
Yes.
Okay. Now the gyroscope, what will it measure? It will just measure that how much tilting or rotational force that you have applied. Angular angles, angular velocity means how forcefully have you tilted it or rotated it, right? So we are having both accelerometer and gyroscope inside one sensor, and that is called IMU. And we can use that to track the movement patterns of any body part or any object. You can place it anywhere, and from that you can track its angular velocity and acceleration. Right? So is it clear to everyone what is an IMU sensor and how it works? Shall we move on?
Yes, sir. You may proceed, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So now we know that two things. The first thing is we know that we are having a variable requirement of a wearable device in rehabilitation exercises, right? And also we have IMU sensors which can track the orientation and movement of any object on which it has been placed. So combining these two things, we can say that now we can design a device which can track some movement patterns of any body part, right? But for that, for tracking that, the machine or the computer or the processing power, microcontroller or processor that you are using it in the device has to learn something. What it has to learn, it must know that what is a good pattern or a good movement and what is a bad movement, right? means which one is a proper motion and which is not a proper motion. That machine cannot decide by itself. We have to train it. And for that training, we have to learn the concepts of machine learning. We have to teach the device to how to interpret the data provided by the sensor. The sensor will give all the data. Means it will give thousands of data about the movement patterns. It will give x-axis acceleration, y-axis, z-axis. It will give the angular velocity on rho, pitch, and yaw axis, and it will also give the magnetic field intensities. Idea about that also can be obtained from IMU sensors, right? It will give all kind of data, but how to interpret that data, right? That we have to tell to the device, and that can be done through machine learning. Okay, so now let us move on to machine learning. Now, what is machine learning? Machine learning algorithms are, okay, anyone having doubt in the chat? Okay. Machine learning algorithms, what they actually do, they find the natural patterns in data that generate insight and help us make better decisions and predictions. Machine learning is used to take decisions and predict, right? For making the prediction, we are using machine learning. We are going to teach the device or the machine that how to predict the movement. PPT is not fully visible. Someone is having problem. PPT is not fully visible. Everyone
Actually,
is having
sir,
yeah.
it is fully visible. But the thing is, participant have to pin your video. Means they
Okay.
have to go in participant list and then click on your name, Rasmin Tanna, and
Okay.
just pin your video. Then they can able to view the full screen.
Okay. Okay.
So,
So,
participant, I request you to pin
could you
pin the Rasmin Tanna sir's video. Then you can able to see the full PPT.
Could you highlight my video? There is an option like that in MS Team that you can put the spotlight on one of the participant and everyone can see that. Like that, there is some feature is there, I think. Okay, let me check. Now is it visible to everyone completely? Is it visible now? Yes. Okay. Okay. Now, machine learning, what we are going to do is how we'll make the machine learn how to predict that the proper movement is taken place or not. First of all, we would train the machine that the movement has come from which person, right? Because the wearable sensor, everybody's movement is different because of its body structure, right? So first of all, the machine has to train to a particular person's body movement, and then it can decide whether the movement the next time it can decide after training, right? First of all, you have to provide the machine with the data, and we have to give the classification that this movement is proper and this movement is not proper, and after that machine will take the decision by itself, right? It is just like teaching a kid, right, that this thing is good and this thing is bad, and next time when he grows, means learns, he will decide by itself that this thing is good and this thing is bad. In the same way, we have to teach the machine, right? So what is a machine learning? Machine learning is a technique, right? Machine learning is a technique which will train the machine to interpret the data and give the prediction or the decision based on it, right? Without our help. If we have to give it help every time, then what is the use of it, right? It should be automated. The machine must give the decision and prediction by itself, and every time it has to take the decision by itself after training, right? First we have to train it, at that time we have to help it, but after that it has to do it on its own. So there are two types of machine learning techniques that are popular. That is, one is unsupervised learning and second one is supervised learning. Yeah, right. As its name suggests, right? What is a supervised learning? In supervised learning, we train the model and we know the input and the output data. Both is known to us, right? There is some data, right, about the movement, and we know both that this is a proper movement and this is an improper movement, right? We know both. Now, if we know both and we tell the machine that this data, in this data, this movement, particular movement A is proper and particular movement B is not proper, then when a movement C comes after training it, then when a movement C comes, the machine will tell by itself that the movement is proper or not. How it will tell, that depends on the algorithm that you are using to train the machine. How accurately it will tell, how sensitive it will be to the movement, how specific it will be to the movement, right? That all depends on the algorithm which you are using. But this type of machine learning technique is known as supervised learning. Okay. In supervised learning, we know both the input data and output data. We know both. Right. Okay. Now the second technique is known as unsupervised learning. Now, what is unsupervised learning? In unsupervised learning, the machine has to find some intrinsic patterns in the data and has to decide from that input data that which one is the proper data and which one is not a proper data. Right. One of the example I can give you is identifying the handwriting. Okay. Suppose I am having some handwriting, means I am writing something, a sentence I am writing. The different person writing the same sentence has different strokes, different size of the letters, right? There are many characteristics of handwriting. Now, how to identify that? That can be done through regression process, and it is also one type of supervised learning. But in unsupervised learning, you do not know the output, means you are not knowing what kind of patterns the data set is having. How to differentiate between the two different classes, that we are not knowing properly, or we are knowing some little bit, one or two things we are knowing but not properly. Then we can use unsupervised learning. In unsupervised learning, there are many methods, but the most popular one is neural network method. Right? The neural network method, which can be programmed very easily. It can be programmed using TensorFlow, a software provided by Google. Right, and in that you can program using Python language different kinds of neural networks, and you can work with them, and you can use this unsupervised learning to train your machine. Okay, so there are many types of machine learning algorithms, but mainly there are two types, supervised and unsupervised. In supervised learning, there are two types, that is classification and regression. In classification portion, means you want to classify, means A, B, C are the three classes, and the data set which comes has to be labeled with A, B or C. Like that you want to classify something, right? Then in classification, there are many algorithms like support vector machines, SVM algorithm, discriminant analysis is there, naive Bayes is there, nearest neighbors, KNN, K nearest neighbors algorithm is there. This kind of algorithms are used for classification. And what we are doing in this topic of wearable sensor devices, that we are tracking the lower limb movement patterns, and then we are going to classify it. We are going to classify it that the movement was proper or not. So we are using this technique, that is classification technique, and from this we are going to use one of the algorithm, that is support vector machine SVM algorithm we are going to use. Okay. Now other types of supervised learning is a regression, that is linear regression is there, right? And decision tree is one of the best methods for regression, right? You can use that also. That is also one kind of supervised learning. But I have found the easiest one is SVM among these, right? And in unsupervised learning, the process is known as clustering. We have to cluster the data. We are clustering the data, types of data which are we group of data. We have to differentiate in different groups of data because it is unsupervised, right? Because we do not know properly what the output will be, what kind of output will be, we do not know properly. So we have, the machine itself has to find some hidden patterns. What the machine will try to do, it will take all the data and it will try to cluster similar type of data sets, right? It will try to cluster them, make a group of them, and by doing clustering it will find some hidden patterns in this. I will talk in very detailed how to do this classification and all. I will provide the images of the how it is done in software, right? Like MATLAB, how it is done, right? This is just an overview of how the machine learning technique can be implemented. Okay. So any doubt? Yes, someone was asking something about PPT. Having some issues about PPT. Now it is clear. Okay. Okay, done. Great. Now, which one to choose? We are having both the methods, supervised and unsupervised. I already gave you the answer. We are going to do a supervised machine learning, right? We are going to do supervised machine learning, and in that we are going to do classification because we want to classify a good movement, bad movement, means or a proper motion is done or not, a improper motion is done or not. So we want to classify it. So we have to use classification method, and we already know the output, right? So we are using supervised learning. We already know the output. We have standards, right? The physiotherapists, professionals have the standards. They all know that which movement is proper and which movement is not proper. Okay. So we know the output, so we are doing supervised learning, and in that classification, which algorithm we are going to use? We are going to use SVM algorithm. Now, what is SVM algorithm? This support vector machine algorithm, what it will do? It classifies the data by finding the linear decision boundary. Means linear decision boundary, a line which is also known as hyperplane, that will separate all the data points of one class from the other class, right? You can see in the figure here that there are two kinds of data set is there. Okay, one is red colored, that is 0, and other is plus, right? Now you want to differentiate this. These are plotted in x and y axis. This axis can be anything, means acceleration in x direction and orientation in y direction. This axis can be anything. Okay. Now in this axis, we are having two data sets. Some data is different from the other. Now how to differentiate them? After differentiating them only, we can decide that one of the data is proper and one of the data is not proper, right? The machine has to learn to differentiate this data. How to differentiate it? So what will SVM do? SVM will find hyperplanes. Hyperplane means it will find lines such that it will line which is passing through one kind of which is not touching both the datas and passing in between them. It will find this kind of hyperplanes. So here you can see that there are 3 hyperplanes. You can see here. So on the right side, which hyperplane is to be selected? So we have to select an optimum hyperplane which is having some margin in both the sides. Means we have to find some support vectors. Means here you can see in the diagram, two of the green plus data have been taken as support vector and one of the red 0 data has been taken as support vector, and between them one line has been stretched, and that hyperplane that is optimum hyperplane which is having a margin, right, which is having some margin. Means the gap is there between both the support vectors. So SVM machine will find this kind of hyperplanes, and from these data sets now we can easily classify the data above the line. Means the data which is on the upper side, right side of the line is proper movement, and the data which is on the left side of the line is not proper. Okay, done. You got everyone got this basic points, right? It is a very basic topic, right? In SVM, we are talking just about linear SVM. There are many types of different SVM algorithms, right? The SVMs, they use kernel functions to transform non-linear separable data. Here what we have taken the example, in this example the data was easily separable by a line, but there may be cases in which the data is mixed like that it is not separable by a line or a hyperplane. In that case you have to use some parabola or some quadratic equation, right, other than the line. You can use some circle, you can use some curve, right? So this type of algorithms, what they will do, this type of algorithms along with SVM, they will transform non-linearly separable, right? Still there is some issue with the PPT. Okay, right? So what it will do, it will perform a non-linearly separable data. It will separate, transform into higher dimensions where linear decision boundaries can be found. As what SVM will do, it will try the data in different transforms, using different transforms, whether it is separable or not. It will try for in different algorithms, means different functions. It will use different functions which will transform this data such that finally a linear boundary can be stretched between this data. It will keep transforming, right? So the best hyperplane of an SVM is the one with the largest margin between the two classes or the support vectors, right? The best SVM that the best hyperplane of the SVM that we can find is such that which is having largest margin. Means it is having a largest gap between the two classes. Why largest gap is preferable? Means it becomes very easy for the machine to decide whether the new data is in this side or this side. If the gap is very less and the new data is somewhere here, then the machine cannot decide easily whether the new data which is processed is on right side or the left side of the hyperplane. Correct. So when you want to decide or make the machine learn about only two classes, you are having only two classes, yes or no, proper or improper, high or low, that kind of situations when you want to decide, then SVM is the best algorithm for it. Okay. So SVM accurately classifies the data using hyperplane technique, and if it is not linearly separable data, then it will transform into non-linearly separable data is there, then it will transform into higher other dimensions by using functions, and then finally it will make it linearly separable. and then it will decide, it will find many hyperplanes, and from that it will decide the best hyperplane having maximum margin, right, as it is shown in the figure. Okay, are you with me, right? Okay, everyone. So this was all about the basics, right? Prerequisite of how you can start now programming the wearable device using machine learning. Okay, now we can go through how to begin programming machine learning, begin programming wearable devices using machine learning. Okay. Okay, so now lots of students ask me how to start, sir, from where to start programming wearable device. I know everything that there is a huge scope, and we want to develop. I have a concept or an idea where I want to track some movement or track some activity, but where to start, where to find everything, how to assemble everything, right? So this is for them, that how to start working with wearable devices and how to assemble everything. Okay. So this is the process flow of any wearable device which you want to convert it into a movement tracking device, or you want to use the sensor for taking decisions, right? If you want to use the sensor in case of some blind person or handicapped person, you want to indicate them about some danger, right? Or you want to prevent some accident happening to them. In every cases, you can follow this process, and you can finally come to a stage where your wearable device will be ready after machine learning. Okay, so the first step in all of them, in any process, is to find the placement of the sensor. First of all, you need to find proper placement of the sensor, right? Means what you want to track. Do you want to track the movement of lower limb? Then the placement of the sensor could be from your trunk to your knee, to your ankle, to your foot, to your shank, to your thighs, where you want to place it, right? Sensor is a very small device, compact device. So you have to decide where you want to place it. You want to measure the movement of your hand, then you have to decide where you want to place. You want to place it on your palm, on back of your palm, right? On your elbow, near your elbow, right? Near your shoulder. Where do you want to place it? How we can decide it where you want to place it? By trial and error methods. What you want to calculate? Do you want to calculate the movement of your leg? Just movement of your leg, you can place it on the shank region. You want to track the angles of your knee, the movement of the angles of your knee joint, then you have to put a sensor somewhere near your thigh, right? You want to track the movement of your ankle, right? Then you have to put the sensor in the foot area of your leg. Okay. Except from the body parts also, you want to track the movement of different things. Like if you want to apply it to some sports, you want to put the sensor in the cricket bat or tennis racket. Then from that also you can track the movement of how much force is applied, right? How much force is applied in a cricketing shot, or how much force is applied in a tennis racket, in which direction the movement took place, how much forcefully in that direction the movement took place. And from that you can come to a conclusion that why the shot played was properly or the shot was not played properly. In sports also you can use it. But the matter of the fact is the placement of the sensor is the most important thing. If you want to track the movement of the bat, the sensor must be placed near the handle. If you want to track the movement of the tennis racket, then the sensor must be placed near the grip of the racket. From there you can decide the orientation and the acceleration in the in which direction it took place and how much amount of forcefully the acceleration took place. Okay, so the first point is the sensor placement. The second point is real-time signals. What kind of sensor you are using? Do you want to measure ECG signals? Do you want to measure the oxygen level of the body? Do you want to measure the acceleration? Do you want to measure the orientation? What do you want to measure? That real-time signals are very important. The real-time signals which you get from the sensor and in the format which you get. You will get analog signals from the sensor. Then you need to process that, condition that signal in a such a way that you get the signals which in such a format that finally you can process that signals. Okay, when you get analog signals, you cannot process it in the computer. You want to process it in the computer processor, you have to convert them into digital signals. So you have to sample them. You have to decide the sampling rate, at which sampling rate you want to sample them. You don't want to oversample or undersample it. Right? You have to choose the window. Means when you get the signal and you perform the sampling, you are going to get some noise also. You have to select the window in which you want to work with, process with. The important signal, the important information is there. So from real-time signals of accelerometer, gyroscope, magnetometer, ECG signals, right? Oxygen level, you want to measure light signals, right? So all that real-time signals, you have to then extract the features. So the third step here is feature extraction. How can you extract the features and what is the meaning of features? Means every real-time signal which you get in an analog form, then you convert it into the digital format, then you can find some features in it. Features means it will be having some mean value. All the data or data set will be having some mean value, will be having some statistical values like standard deviation, maximum minimum value, RMS, root mean square values, median values. It will be having everything like that. From that you have to extract the features. Means a data is having some kind of particular inherent pattern. You have to extract it. How you can extract it? There are some predefined statistical analysis which we can do on a data. Perform that. From that you can find that yes, always the data is coming near to the first standard deviation. When the movement is proper, the data is coming near to first standard deviation. You can say that. Or when the force was improperly applied, the data moved to the third standard deviation. You can say that. It will be having some features. The data set will be having some features which you need to extract it from. The data will not tell you that, the data set will not tell you that it is having what kind of features. You have to extract all the features, and from that you have to select only the important features which are applicable to your analysis. There may be hundreds of features in a data. Right, you can find the mean of acceleration in x and y direction. You can find y and z direction. You can find it z and x direction. But the most important feature which is affecting the class of data from being proper to improper, you have to find that most important significant feature, and you need to eliminate the non-significant features. Unimportant features you need to eliminate from the list. You will be having 60 of features. I will show you again in the next slides, coming slides, right? What kind of features we are getting, and from that we will eliminate most of the features, and we will be just selecting a small set of features which are affecting our decision. What is the benefit of that? The benefit of that is the power is saved. Our processor's power is saved. Our time is saved. Right? We can get quick response. Right? So unimportant features are removed, and features which are of most significant or the most important features are kept. And from that features, we can make we can take a plot, right? We can take a plot from that features, and from that plot we can, after applying SVM or any algorithm, then we can differentiate the data in different classes. Proper movement, improper movement, we can classify it, right? And then after classification, we can put the whole data in a confusion matrix. In a confusion matrix, we can, by looking at one matrix, we can tell that the decision taken by our device, right? Decision taken by the device is how much it is positive results, how much the true positive, right? How much it was false negative, right? That kind of decisions we can see in the confusion, that kind of values we can see in the confusion matrix, that I will show. That is all known as post processing. After feature extraction, what we do is all known as post processing. That can be done in different softwares. You can use TensorFlow of Google. In Python language you can process it. You can use MATLAB, which is the easiest thing to do right now, right? You can do you can use Veka software is also there. That also you can do post processing. These are all freely available. Okay. And finally, what we will do after post processing, once our machine starts learning and we cross validate it, and after testing it many times, after finding its accuracy about 96-98%, right? Then we can give it for evaluation and feedback to our end users, means to doctors and to patients. We can give that device, and from that they will evaluate, they will use it daily, they will keep the log in the mobile app or in the email, and from that they will decide whether the wearable device is fit for this application or not. So this is the whole process. Okay, so everyone are with me about this process? Any doubt in this process? Any queries? How to synchronize, the very good question. Yes, how to synchronize multiple sensor data. Yes, I will show you that also, that how to get the data from multiple sensors. Means you can use two sensors. One you can place it on the foot, one you can place it on the thigh. Both the data you get, both the data you collect it, right? Collect it, and then what we have to do, we have to combine the data, or you have to separate the noise. You have to remove the noise from both the data, and then you can combine it, right? You can combine it, means at what moment, means at the time reference, keeping time as a reference, right? In time domain, you check that at what moment, when at the moment when the ankle was moving, at that time only the thigh area was moving or not. You have to check it with respect to time domain, that also. And by tracking that, you can by combining both of them, first you can individually, you can run through both of them and train the machine, and then finally by combining the data, you can train the machine, and you can get the output in a synchronized way. The output will be based on by taking the decision of both the sensors individually. Machine will take the decision of the first sensor, then second sensor, and based on that decision, it will take the final decision whether the motion was proper or not. If the movement in first sensor and the movement in second sensor both are proper, then the machine can say that, or we can set the limit also, that in within this limit the motion was there, within this limit the motion was there, right? Movement was there. It is an acceptable limit. Then the machine can tell that in a synchronized way, can tell that the motion was proper. If one of the sensors motion is not proper, then the machine will tell that the motion is not proper, or the movement is not proper. You can sync both the data. Hope I clarified it, right? Or you are asking something else? Okay. Census data are collected individually only. Okay. It is not like that both the census data is mixed and then we process it like that. No. Census data are collected individually only. We work with them individually only, and finally the decision is taken after getting the taking the decisions individually. The final decision is taken on that the decided part from individually decided part. Okay. Okay. Now we're going through what we can work right now in this sector of rehabilitation using wearable devices. We must learn now what work has already been done, right? Some of the work that already been done, and from that we can get some important points. Okay, some of the work that are already been done. See, this is one of the work that is done using inertial sensor for single leg squat mobility test, right? It is for single leg squat. You all may be knowing what is a squat exercise, right? Single leg squat means on one leg you have to do the squat. Okay, so while doing that exercise, in this research, there were 3 IMU sensors used. Someone was asking that how to synchronize these 3 sensors. What they did, they placed 3 sensors. One was placed on the thigh region, second was on the shank region, and the third one was placed on the trunk region where we tie our belt, right? So at the trunk region, one sensor was there, thigh and shank. Now what is the main aim behind this experiment is to find out, while doing the single leg squat, can the sensors decide that the motion was or the squat exercise was properly done or not. In this experiment, seven of the participants were there. 1 was female, 6 was male. All were injury free. These experiments are done on injury free participants, and 5 repetitions of the exercise were done. 5 times repetition was done of the exercise, right? And for classification, the method they used the algorithm SVM, decision tree and logistic regression. All the algorithms they tested on it, right? What the final result they got? The result of the feature selection highlight the importance of angle, internal rotation angle in classifying. As I told you before also, that we will get many features from the data, but from that we have to select the one of the significant feature. And in this exercise, the ankle internal rotation angle, that feature is of the most importance. And the second thing is that 98% accuracy has been obtained using SVM. Means the SVM algorithm is having 98% accuracy. Okay, means between 2 class. As I told you, SVM is best for deciding between true or false, high or low, yes or no, right? Or proper, improper. This algorithm is best. But when it comes to 3 classes, means one movement is proper, one movement is not proper, third movement is fair enough. No, okay. That kind of 3 classes if you are having, right? Then decision tree is giving maximum accuracy and it is about 73%, which is very low, right? Okay. So one point that we got, that is IMUs can be used at 98% accuracy if you are having 2 classes. Okay. So second research that has been done for knee osteoarthritis, right? That is for knee joint problems, pain in the knee joint problems. What kind of exercises that were done in the rehabilitation center? Standing hamstring curls were done, reverse hip abduction, and straight leg raise. In the picture, you can see all the exercises, right? in this experiment, they used 5 accelerometers. Okay, they used 5 accelerometers. They put one in the trunk, one on the left and right thighs, and one on the left and right shank. Means previously it was one leg squat, so they tracked the movement of single leg. Now you want to track the movement of both the legs, right? So you need to place the sensors on both the sides of the legs. Okay, they covered it on both the sides. Now, what is the output? What kind of software they use? They use VECA software package, right? And classification, they use global features based classification. The system obtains an average sensitivity of 86% and the average is above 74%. Sorry, and above 86% and accuracy is about 74%. Accuracy was 74% and sensitivity was 86%. Okay, so the algorithm classified accurately 74% times. 74% times it was accurate, gave the proper output, and it was sensitive to only 86% of the, on an average of the time. 86% time it was sensitive to the data change. Okay, but the problem is they have tested only on the 9 participants. In the previous case also you can see only 7 participants were there. You cannot make a device by taking only the data of only 9-10 participants. You have to have a very large data set, and that too both the researches were done on injury free participants. They have not yet done any work on injured persons, right? Okay. The third one, the third research which has been done recently, that is based on 3 accelerometers, 3 IMU sensors on one side of the leg, that is thigh, shank and foot, 3 accelerometers, that is performed on 58 participants. They were having a rehabilitation program they were going through, right? And they use the classification method, global feature based classification, logistic regression, and multi-single sensor setup. They tried with both single sensors and sensors. We will also try with both multiple and single sensors. What is the output of this? The average accuracy they found was 81, 82, right? Between correct and incorrect performance using 3, 2 and 1 sensor. You got it? When they use 3 sensors, they got accuracy 81%. When they got 2 sensors, accuracy was 82. When they use 1 sensor, accuracy was 83. So that was a very significant outcome. That while using only single sensor, you are getting same accuracy. Then why to use 3 sensors? So there is no need of multiple sensors to track the movement while having this while doing this leg exercise. A single sensor can also detect with the same accuracy. Okay. This one is the best mobile app which tracks the movement patterns of the gym going exercises, right? Squats, lunges, single leg squats and deadlifts. In this mobile app which was developed, in this mobile app, a person which starts the tracking using the sensor, which is only one sensor that is placed on the left thigh. Only one sensor placed on the left thigh can decide how much steps, how much repetitions it has taken. Means how many times you have done the exercise, 5 times, 10 times, 11 times. It can decide, and also it can say that technique is properly or not. Both it can say. Okay, but it has been tested on only 15 participants, which were all injury free. No one was having any injury, and all were gym going persons, and on that it was tested. Now, how much accuracy? 89.50% accuracy, 90% sensitivity, and 89% specificity was obtained from this. So only a single sensor is also that much effective in deciding the whether the exercise has been done properly or some tweaking in the exercise is required, right? Last and the most important thing is how can we decide whether the exercise has been properly done or not? There are only two ways. First way is you hire a professional physiotherapist and tell him to observe each and every repetition of the exercise that you are performing, and then from the labels that he gives, that first exercise, first repetition was okay or proper, second was not proper, third was proper, fourth was proper, fifth was not proper. Whatever he says, that is all mentioned about each and every repetition of exercise that you do, and then you decide, then you train your machine. That is the first method. Second method is you get an already trained data set, right, which is already labeled data set, not trained data set, already labeled data set, which is not available easily for all the exercise or all the movements. It is not available, and the so it is rare. But one more thing you can do, that is you can note down the exercise visually, and also you can capture it in a Kinect camera, right, or the depth based camera or the motion camera. You can capture it in motion camera as well as you can label it on your own. And by capturing it from motion camera, you will get the markers are placed at the place of sensor. Marker is also placed. So from that marker, you will get the movement patterns or movement patterns and the angles of the joints you will get from that camera. Like here you can see from the diagram that a person is using the sensor as well as markers, and when he is moving, the data from these markers is taken and an animation is created. You can easily create an animation. Ready-made codes are also available for this in MATLAB. You provide some positions or angles to it and it will create an animation, right, easily. So it will create an animation, and from these animations you can compare with real life the exercise a person is performing, and from that you can compare and decide whether the exercise was properly done or not. So the classification method they used is on was video recording. They did not use any machine learning technique. So this way also you can do, but in this you need motion capture, image processing, and everything is very costly as well as it is not feasible. Okay. 5 points which are very important. The first point that is important is a single sensor can provide the properly with accuracy, can provide the movement of your lower limb. No need of multiple sensors, right? In cases, in some exceptional cases where you need some accurately at data of some particular location, right, multiple locations, then only you use multiple sensors. Otherwise, to track these exercises you don't need multiple sensors. Second is SVM is very optimal. It is an optimal algorithm for this task, right? Third is IMU sensors accuracy is comparable to motion capture's accuracy, right? We can do same thing with motion capture, which costs lakhs of rupees, and same thing we can do with sensors which cost few thousands, right, having same accuracy. Okay. Fourth thing which is important is you require a very large data set to say that your device has been trained. You need to work on a very large data set. Thousands of data you need, right? Okay, so these are the 5 important points. The last point is it is very cost effective, right? So 5 important points. Now let's move on. How can we finally implement after gaining all this knowledge? How can step by step we finally implement this in our real life, right? Research. Okay. So I'm going to show you the work, some of the portion of the work which I have done, right? So I have worked with single IMU sensor on lower limb exercises. I have selected 2 exercises. Okay, I have selected 2 exercises. One of them is while sitting, you raise your leg. That is sitting leg raise. And the second one is lying, when you are in a lying position and you perform a leg raise. Both are very simple exercises. Okay, so 2 exercises I have selected. So machine has to learn which exercise is being performed. One thing that he has to learn, that which exercise is being performed. Second thing, the machine has to learn which person is performing the exercise. And the third thing machine has to learn is whether the exercise is proper or not. So 3 things the machine has to learn. Okay. Now, initially I worked with a single IMU sensor, which was placed on one single leg, right, on the shank region. Second is I worked with 2 sensors. One was placed on the foot and the other was placed on the shank region, right? 2 sensors combining the 2 results of 2 sensors, and also single sensors individually. Individually also I used 2 sensors, and we can track that which sensor is working proper. I used 2 different kind of sensors. One I used was IMU sensor, and the second one was I used mobile as a sensor. Our mobile is also having IMU sensors. Everybody knows that, correct? Our Android device, mobile devices are having IMU sensors. We all know that. It is working perfectly with the motion, right? When you rotate your mobile, the screen rotates. So it is knowing the orientation. When you are playing the game of some car game or something, when you move your mobile, the car is also moving in the game. So our mobile is having IMU sensor. We can use that also. No need to even purchase a new sensor. You can practice using your mobile also. Okay. So initially I tested on 4 adults, right? 4 senior citizens and 1 child. So totally 9 participants I have taken, 2 exercises I have taken. 1600 training observations were made. 20 repetitions per exercise I have made them to perform, and 1000 testing observations, right? 1600 training observations means 1600 data of all accelerometer and gyroscope. 1600 rows of data was used for training the machine, and then we have to test the machine whether it is properly trained or not, right? While training we will tell the machine that this is proper, this is not proper. We will tell him. While testing we will not tell him, machine will tell us that whether the exercise is proper or not. Okay, so 20 predictors were used and 18 response classes were used. Now what is predictors and response classes, that we will see. Okay, the sensor which I have used is with motion sensor. I have told you, Bluetooth sensor. Its app is there in mobile. While the sensor, when you switch on the sensor and you move the sensor and you connect it with Bluetooth with your mobile, then in the mobile its app is there, and you will get all the data X, Y, and Z, and you can calibrate the sensor there, and finally you can get the data in text format, right? The text format will look like this. Okay, the text format will look like this. The data will be divided into rows and columns, and all the columns here are representing different data. That is AX, suppose AX is there, right? So AX is representing acceleration in X direction. Then AY, AZ, 1, 2, and 3. First 3 columns are AX, AY, AZ. Second 3 columns are WX, WY, WZ. Means it is representing angular velocity. Then X, Y, and Z are orientations, and meg X, meg Y, meg Z are magnetic field effect of magnetometer. From this, the data which is important to us is acceleration data, right? Acceleration and orientation data is only important for us. Okay. What we will do, we will use MATLAB software, and in that software we will use a signal analyzer. You all might have used it somewhere, right? Somewhere in your lectures or in practical labs, right? So signal analyzer, what we will do, we will import the data, right? And after importing the data, we will analyze the data, and we will see that the samples of the data are not properly conditioned or properly smooth. So what we will do next is we will condition the or smoothing of the data we will do. Right, you can see from the diagram, we will smoothen the data. How can we smooth this data? By applying different kind of filters. By applying different kind of filters, we can smoothen the data, right? What kind of filters can we apply? There are many filters. Mean median is there, Gaussian filters are there, right? Kalman filter is there. You can apply anything which is suitable for your data. So after smoothing this data, now removing all the noise from the data, it is very clear that we can easily find out 20 repetitions. 20 spikes are there, you can easily count it, and each spike has different magnitude, right? So from that you can decide this diagram is of only two variables, right? In the left side you can see two variables are there. Two variables are variables can be mean or standard deviation, right? Any statistical characteristics it could be there. Okay, so perfectly smooth data is available after applying 3 filters, different kinds of filters. Finally, what we will do, we will extract all the features from this, right? We will set the window size, and then we will extract the features from this, and then we will label the features. Okay, we will label it in the last row. We will label it in an Excel sheet. We will label it that this is a proper exercise, or this is a sitting exercise or lying exercise of participant 1 or 2 or 3. We have to give the name of it. So machine will know that which one is proper, which one is lying, which one is sitting exercise, right? And of which participant it is. And after extracting the features and then selecting the main features from that, keeping that main features only, then we will open it into one of the tool is there, one app is there in MATLAB, that is classification learner. In that classification learner, when you open it, it will perform machine learning algorithms in it, that is SVM or decision tree, nearest neighbor, optimizable SVM, all kinds of algorithms are there in classification learner. You can apply them and see the accuracy, right? After feature selection, you can apply the SVM algorithm, and then you can get this model, right? This is the confusion matrix. In this, there are total there are around 1600 observations are there, right? And in all the observations, blue colored observations which are perfectly correctly predicted, and these red color ones are not predicted perfectly. So the accuracy is around 95%, right? In the lower portion, you can see, suppose I have written SPS SIT, means the participant's name I have written, and it is a sitting exercise, right? SPS sleep I have written means it is a sleeping exercise. So it will decide whether the which person is doing exercise and whether it is lying or sitting exercise. So this is the true class and predict versus predicted class confusion matrix. It is called confusion matrix. It will show directly in MATLAB after running the SVM. Then what we can do, then we can optimize. One of the thing we can do with our algorithm is optimize it. How to optimize it? What is the meaning of optimize? Optimization is required when we decide that our algorithm is there, but it is taking too much time. It is processing unnecessary things. It is repeatedly processing many times. Means if you can get the output after processing 10 times, then why you are going to process 30 times? So in the diagram, you can see the lower portion is iterations, means number of times the processing has taken place. So after 5 iterations, the error rate remains low, near about 0.04. So after 5, 6, 7 iterations, if you do even 1000 time iterations, the accuracy will remain same only. Then why to waste our energy? So this will create an optimum algorithm And we can tell this algorithm that you iterate only 20 times, don't iterate 30 times, right? So this kind of prediction model we will have after after we have trained our machine by training data. This kind of model we will have. In this you can particularly see similar kind of data group has been made separate from other groups, right? There are some X marks are written somewhere in the diagram. You can see that are false, incorrect data, incorrectly predicted data. Machine has not predicted correctly. We are having 95% accuracy, so 5% of the data is not predicted correctly. There they have marked X. Okay, other data has been classified perfectly. Which two predictors I have taken? I have taken average of acceleration, right? Total average of acceleration and acceleration in X direction. Okay, the sensor was placed such that the movement was taking place in X direction of the lower limb. So I have taken the most important feature and made this prediction model. Don't just be satisfied with only one algorithm. You need to run many kinds of algorithm to decide which algorithm is better for you. So there are SVM, linear SVM, then quadratic SVM, cubic SVM, right? There are many types of SVMs are available, and from that you decide whose accuracy is best. So in this we are getting quadratic SVM is getting best accuracy, that is 96%. So we have selected that, right? And after running this algorithm, after deciding the model, you will get the code, C program code of the your model, and you can use this model to test the new data. So this is the confusion matrix of tested data. The previous one was of trained data. In that we in the training we used the data to train the machine, and in testing the new data was applied, which machine did not know which one was of whose data. Machine has to decide, and in that it has given this blue colored ones are properly decided and red color ones are not properly decided. So its accuracy has remained same around 96%, right? Okay, someone is asking something. Yes, we can leave behind some of the real data for cross checking the model and its prediction for yes. I have done same thing. I have had 25, if I am having 2500 observations, what I will do, I will take 1500 observations, 1500 for training my model and 1000 observations for testing the model. Okay, in this way you can cross validate your model. So this one was done by using single IMU sensor. Similarly, you can do it with your mobile app also. You just need to download one Android app, that is Firefox. There is one app, Firefox PHOX. You download it. You will get all the accelerometer, gyroscope, magnetometer data from your mobile. Your mobile can be used as sensor. You can place it on the lower limb. I have placed it in the lower limb of 4 participants, 4 senior citizens, 2 adults and 1 child. So 7 participants I have taken. 2 exercise was there. Same 2 exercise, same 20 repetitions. But number of observations which I received from mobile device was around 9,000. So 9,000 were for training and 5,000 around were for testing. Why I got more observation? Because its a sampling rate was very high. In IMU sensor 100 Hz was the sampling rate. In this the sampling rate is very high. So what in this mobile app there was no calibration option for decreasing the sampling rate. So I had worked with all the observations, and you can see lot more kind of dots. You will see 3 different kinds of different classes were detected easily, right? I have tested it on all SVMs and found accuracy in cubic SVM. I told you know that SVM can have different kinds of transforms, quadratic, cubic, right, Gaussian, different linear types of transforms, and we can use the best one. And the best SVM that best accuracy I got was 83%. Why the accuracy decreased from 96 to 83? Because there was a lot of noise. Because of the sampling rate was very high, there was lot of noise. There were lot of unwanted signals, unwanted data in the data set, right? That's why the accuracy has decreased while training. So this was the confusion matrix while training with 83% accuracy, and the same confusion matrix on tested data with 5,000 observation. Okay, in this also accuracy is very low, that is around 80%. Okay, so finally what I have done, what I did was combine both the sensors. I have tested on senior citizens 2, 1 adult, 1 child, totally 4 participants taken to exercise 20 repetitions. And after combining both the sensors data individually, and then making the decisions, I got 96%, 0.8% accuracy back, right? So it was same as using a single sensor. No difference was there. You can see from here, the model which was made was similar to the one that was made using single IMU sensor. Right, this is the prediction model. Then I have done optimization of the SVM. Right, this optimization, the best point for optimization. But one important thing which I noted by combining the two sensors is that optimization we can reach the optimum value very fast. In the previous one we required around 20 iterations. In this only 4-5 iterations you will get the minimum error rate. So optimization is very good using two sensors. This is the confusion matrix which we get while training, and this was the confusion matrix which we get by testing the data. In this accuracy is very good. Only 7 observations were incorrectly detected, but other all were detected properly. Yes, someone was having doubt. What is the good criteria to reduce the number of variables or to increase the number of variables for better result, or we should have something in between? There is no predefined laws or rules that can give you that proper, only this variable is good, only this variable is bad, all this number of variables are good. Every application requires lots and lots of trial and errors, right? In my case, acceleration of x-axis was better, y and z was not better. Maybe in your case, y and z may be better, orientation may be better, its mean value may be better, standard deviation may be better, maximum minimum value may be better. You can decide which variable is better for your application. There is no rule book. You have to try with all the variables. What you have to do, use all the variables in signal analyzer one by one, and then you can differentiate which one is proper, which one is giving proper signal or not, means in which you can easily remove the noise or not. Okay, you can easily detect the variable in which you can easily detect 20 repetitions is the best variable. In this way I had decided. More variables may mean better prediction or may need more optimization, and the equation too may become complex. Yes, more variables means more processing, more time consuming, more energy consuming, and that is not good at all. You need as much less variables as possible without decreasing your accuracy, right? So that's why I put one important point in the process diagram, that feature selection is the most important thing. You might have 60 features, but only 10 are important. 50 are just repetitive ones. They are of not significance value. You are finding mean value of y and z acceleration, but your exercise is having acceleration in x direction only. Then why you are wasting your energy in x and y and z direction? You already know that your movement, raising your leg, will be on x direction only. Then no need to process y and z acceleration. You have to just one time you have to calculate it, use it in signal analyzer, then decide and remove it. Don't use it. It all depends on number of dependent and independent variables. Yes, definitely. There are some variables which are dependent on the others, and there are some variables which are not dependent on others. The variables which are not dependent on others are independent variables. They are main variables, right? Okay. Yes. Some are derived from the independent variables. Some are derived from independent variables. Means their value depends on independent variables. Right? Okay. Okay. So finally, this is all all about the work which I had done. And if you are having any queries, we can discuss it. We are still having 10-15 minutes time, right? So this is all about my topic. Thank you for listening to me, bearing with me for 2 hours. It might have been very tough for you after having lunch, right?
Yes, participants. Any questions?
This is my contact number and mail ID also. If you are having any questions, you can send it on this also. And if you want to work also with on lower limb, then we can also work together on this topic also.
Yes, sir. We have one question. Can we use IMU sensor with other sensor like ECG?
Yes, definitely you can use IMU sensor with other sensors. If you want to track ECG signals as well as movement, right? Or you want to track the exact moment when the person had applied the force, right? And at that time you can use some of the researches have taken place where both the sensors were used together. But in general exercises which we want to apply, rehabilitation exercises of lower limb specifically, ECG sensor is not required. We can use both together also. You have to process both the signals separately.
Any other
Anything
question?
else?
Any other question?
Okay, Anish sir, you just announced about the vote of thanks to the expert. Then we have couple of announcements for the participants.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Tanna sir, for your wonderful session. It was really nice work you already did in PhD, and also we already got some good information about your work and how we can do this kind of research in our own domain also. Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you everyone. Thank you, sir, for giving this opportunity to me. It was a very good experience for me also. Thank you.